And joining us now on the line for an assessment of the president's trip is maritime law expert Dr. J. Batongbakal. Sir, good morning. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Rain, and to all our televiewers and listeners. Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Well, Philippine President Duterte raised the arbitral ruling with Chinese President Xi, and presidential spokesperson Panelo said Duterte is not likely to raise it again. Plus, now there are plans to deal with the matter bilaterally. Former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario says it is a betrayal of trust. What do you think, sir?
Well, at this point, they still can do something about it. Even if they say that they won't raise it now, they can still raise it again. The fact that it was raised and rejected should not be taken as a signal that it cannot be raised again, I think. So the ball is in the Philippine government's court again to keep on raising the arbitration at every opportunity possible, because that's the only way they can use it as leverage for any other concessions.
Professor, 5 times President Duterte has been to China, and he and Xi agreed to adopt a code of conduct in the South China Sea at an early date, although that's unspecified. And Duterte said he would settle this issue in the last years of his presidency. But it seems they actually agreed to disagree on the South China Sea. So what are we supposed to read from these statements?
Well, I think we also have to remember that the South China Sea disputes are multifaceted. So there are legal issues, and then there are practical or pragmatic issues on the ground, incidents that will continue to take place. So even if China does not want to discuss the arbitral ruling, that does not prevent or that does not resolve any of the standing issues, the other standing issues, as well as the possibility of continuing incidents on the ground. So that should not be taken as a signal that everything has been settled, whether we like it or not. So the Philippine government still has to continue to engage with China on each and every one of these incidents that will likely take place in the future as the two parties stick to their respective positions. The Code of Conduct will only help to manage these issues as they arise and perhaps prevent them from escalating into conflict, but that still does not in any way resolve the problems between the disputes between the two states.
Talk about those issues. It seems one point of view on the issue of the arbitral ruling or a code of conduct in the South China Sea, or any agreement really on the maritime and territorial claims in disputed waters, is that it also forces claimant countries to acknowledge China's claim of a 9-dash line. Do you agree with that, or is it a matter of tweaking the language on such agreements?
No, I don't agree that just one action will already immediately amount to China forcing the other countries to recognize the 9-dash line. And that's why it's important for the Philippines to always be able to raise the arbitration at the appropriate points. Whenever China, for example, asserts its rights, then the appropriate response is to raise the arbitration award. We have to be careful that the Philippines should not in any way acknowledge that China does have any rights to the West Philippine Sea, because the arbitral ruling clearly declared that they do not. So that's how the arbitral ruling will always be raised. No? So that's why it's not correct for the palace to say that it's closing the door on raising it again. It will have to be raised if they are going to be true to their word that they will protect Philippine rights and entitlements in the West Philippine Sea.
Professor, the Philippines is a country coordinator for the ASEAN-China dialogue relations until 2021, and President Duterte's pronouncement that a code of conduct in the South China Sea is the least concern to the United States. Is that a statement of fact or a warning to the U.S. not to interfere?
I would say that that's merely his interpretation of the interests at work and at play in the South China Sea. It is not correct for him that it's of no concern at all the United States, because obviously whatever the countries agree on, which might affect third parties, which might affect the rights of external powers, would be of concern to them, not just the U.S., but everyone else, such as Japan, the UK, even Russia, etc. Everyone who has who can have and exercise legitimate rights in the South China Sea, even if it's just navigation, would have an interest, of course, in what's going on with the Code of Conduct. So for me, I think that's merely his interpretation and does not actually amount to either fact as you describe it, nor should it be seen as a warning.
On to specific incidents, as you mentioned, President Duterte has called on the Chinese government to sanction the crew of the vessel that hit and sank a Filipino fishing boat last June. The Philippine government also saying it will assist the 22 fishermen should they wish to file for monetary claims and criminal cases. Would you say that this case is closed diplomatically and as an isolated maritime incident?
Well, it might isolate it in the sense that it's the only time that this particular set of circumstances have occurred and coincided, but we should not take that to mean that it will never happen again. And the Philippine government does have a duty to help our fishermen, and they really should pursue the claims of our fishermen against theirs, because that's the only way that the two governments, both China and the Philippines, can show really that both parties are respecting the maritime laws that are relevant to that particular incident. For China, it's an opportunity to prove that it is acting as a responsible flag state, and for the Philippines, it is proof that it is indeed asserting and protecting Filipinos' rights in the West Philippine Sea. So they really should do that.
Now, on to another topic, the joint exploration deal right now is down to working groups, and yet we don't know details of that deal, whether it really is 60-40 as per pronouncements. The report quoting now is Senate President Vicente Soto III saying that it is a veiled acceptance that we own the West Philippine Sea, and it would be advantages to the Philippines in its boost to claim the area as well as a bigger share for the country. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree because it's premature to make any kind of judgment or assessment of the effect of these agreements on the Philippines' rights and entitlements in the West Philippine Sea. Both the MOU that was signed last November and the terms of reference basically do not establish any kinds of legal rights or responsibilities or duties on either country. So for now, there is actually no effect. So what we need to look at will be the actual implementation, will be the actual agreements to be signed by the relevant oil companies. No, that's where we will see whether the agreement actually does affect our legal rights and entitlements. So it is premature to make any kind of declaration like that.
Finally, Professor, a report saying that President Duterte plans to build more industrial parks in the Philippines with China, including a steel plant projects to be cleared by the Philippine Trade Department by 2020, and that Chinese company and Steel Asia will participate in that project. It seems to be, this is on top of course, the other report of Chinese investors targeting 3 strategic islands in the northern Philippines for economic and tourist zones. Are these good deals, or should we watch out?
Well, we really should be vigilant and watch out, because we've seen what's happened before, where the Philippines' desire to promote investments has led to these situations where the other party might be taking advantage of the situation or might be acting in a way that is actually contrary to our broader security interests. So I would expect that the government should have learned by now from those previous incidents that were featured very very prominently in the press, so that any subsequent planning for these kinds of economic zones, etc., should take account of those interests now. It should not happen again that all of a sudden we suddenly see that these installations or these economic these businesses are popping up in areas where they should not be. So we hope that by now the Philippine government and its policymakers and decision makers should have already learned from that and be able to make better assessments and decisions from now on.
Good reminders there. Maritime law expert Dr. J. Batumbacal, thanks as always for sharing your thoughts with us.
Welcome, Rain, and to our televiewers, of course, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.